Hey, this is Woodman here, and I want to talk to you today about the art of warfare. In particular, let's start with guerrilla warfare, which is a form of irregular warfare characterized by small, mobile, and often hidden combatants who engage in hit and run tactics, ambushes, and sabotage against a larger conventional military force. Typically waged by smaller forces, non state actors, rebel groups, insurgents who lack the resources for conventional warfare but want to turn the tables by undermining the control of an invading force or occupying force. Guerrilla tactics often rely on surprise, stealth, and the exploitation of terrain and local support to wear down the enemy's morale and resources over time. Remember, the further they extend themselves, the worse it gets. Dirty tactics also refers to the use of unconventional or morally questionable methods in warfare, which is definitely used a lot by guerrilla fighters or desperate combatants facing overwhelming odds. Some of these tactics may include using improvised explosive devices, employing torture, targeting civilians, or violating the rules of war as a whole. While such tactics may be effective in achieving short term objectives, they can also result in widespread human suffering and erode popular support for the cause unless you know for sure that you have a supporting group in the population that is not going to be squeamish about the things you have to do. Asymmetrical warfare, also known as this imbalanced form of warfare, where each side has different resources, different things at its disposal, vast levels of different military power, resources, and capabilities. In this type of warfare, the weaker party often employs unconventional tactics. You want to catch people off guard, right? So you have like guerrilla warfare here, you have terrorism, you also have exploitation of the vulnerabilities of the stronger opponent. And you want to offset their advantages, right? In other words, you can get a large army into a valley, right, and you're attacking from the top of the valley, you've got an advantage. You want to be able to adapt to unpredictable and fluid battlefields, but your enemy will be unused to it and they will have issues, right? And so you want to be able to pin down those elusive enemies. You want to address complex political, social, and economic factors. And you just want to take advantage as a whole, right? Like General Sherman and what he did in the South. It was clearly a war that many were not happy with, but it got the job done. Ambush style skirmishes are also a hallmark of guerrilla warfare, which is exemplified by the tactics used by the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War, right? In this conflict, the Viet Cong often utilized their intricate knowledge of the dense jungles to lay in wait for unsuspecting American patrols, right? Imagine you have all these mines that are laid. Imagine you have these traps. You have these nets. You have a lot of things. Maybe even um, um, uh, certain types of areas that'll just be set on fire immediately as soon as the enemy enters, right? You want to leave the enemy disoriented and vulnerable. You also, guerrillas are going to exploit their intimate knowledge of their home terrain to their advantage, as was seen in the case of the Mujahideen in Afghanistan during the Soviet occupation. Operating in the rugged mountainous terrain of Afghanistan, the Mujahideen utilized hidden valleys, winding trails, as well as natural caves to evade Soviet patrols and launch hit and run attacks, proving to be a formidable challenge for the technologically superior Soviet forces. Remember, tunnel, tunnel, and if you have to think about it again, more tunnel. Misdirection, lies, confusion. These are potent tools in the guerrilla arsenal, as demonstrated by the tactics employed by the Iraqi insurgents during the Iraq War. Through the use of false intelligence, decoys, spreading rumors that turn out not to be true, propaganda, the Iraqi insurgents were able to deceive and disorient coalition forces, making it very difficult for them to distinguish between genuine threats and false alarms, which undermined their effectiveness in combating the insurgency. What about cutting off supply routes? Well, this is a strategic maneuver, which is actually a pretty good one, right? It's aimed at crippling the enemy's ability to sustain their operations, as seen in the tactics employed by the Afghan Taliban against NATO forces. By targeting and disrupting key supply routes, such as the Khyber Pass, the Taliban were able to severely hamper NATO's logistical capabilities, and this exacerbated their difficulties in maintaining their military presence. throughout the region. I mean, you can imagine, right? If you've got the supply line and you need the clothing, the water, the food, whatever ammunition, whatever you need to refill, and that can't come through, you're going to have a problem. Guerrillas also target and burn major resources and ration storehouses as a way to deprive the enemy of vital supplies, as witnessed by Fidel Castro's guerrilla forces during the Cuban Revolution. Targeted sugar plantations, warehouses owned by the existing government, as well as foreign corporations, which disrupted Cuba's economy and weakened the regime's ability to maintain control. This ultimately led to the overthrow of Fulgencio Batista's government, much to the betterment of the Castro regime, of course, but not for the benefit of Cuba as a whole. The use of diseases and biological attack tools also introduced a deadly dimension of guerrilla warfare, as seen in the tactics employed by the Tamil Tigers in Sri Lanka. The Tamil Tigers were seeking to undermine the Sri Lankan government's control over certain regions, deployed suicide bombers, and they used these bombers that were infected with diseases such as anthrax, that could cause all sorts of pestilence, spread panic, and cause significant disruption. Poisoning natural resources is another tactic. It's water resources, food stocks. Very ruthless tactic, but nonetheless, it's employed often by guerrillas, as evidenced by the actions of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. During their reign of terror, the Khmer Rouge contaminated wells and destroyed rice fields, resulting in widespread famine and death, while also instilling fear among the civilian population and undermining overall support for the government. What about night raids? Night raids and fire attacks are also executed under the cover of darkness, as demonstrated by tactics employed by the Maquis in German-occupied France during World War II. The Maquis conducted nighttime sabotage missions and also arson attacks on German military installations and supply depots. They utilized the cover of darkness to evade detection and they maximized the element of surprise, inflicting horrific, significant damage on the enemy. Right? I can speak today. The use of ranged weapons for indirect combat also allows guerrillas to engage enemy forces from a distance, as was seen in the tactics employed by the Kurdish Peshmerga against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. The Peshmerga utilized sniper rifles, mortars, and rocket-propelled grenades to harass and inflict casualty on ISIS fighters from afar, minimizing their own exposure to danger while maintaining pressure on the enemy's positions. What about utilizing technology, right? Modern warfare, right? Utilizing technology to avoid loss of life is a strategic adaptation of guerrilla tactics, as demonstrated by tactics employed by Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Hamas militants employ drones, which are equipped with cameras, as well as GPS technology, so they can go on some scouting and reconnaissance, right? They gather intelligence on Israeli military positions, and this will allow them to plan and execute attacks with precision while reducing the risk of casualties amongst their own ranks. So when you think about it that way, this is why Haiti was able to beat Napoleon, right? Napoleon, the great general, and no matter how many forces he sent, they could not retake this slave colony. So, as a whole, guerrilla warfare is a type of irregular warfare which is characterized by small, mobile combatants who use hit and run tactics, ambushes, and sabotage against larger conventional military forces. It is typically waged by smaller forces, non state actors, rebel groups seeking to undermine the authority of the invading force or the occupying force or the government at large. Many dirty tactics often involve morally questionable methods, such as targeting civilians, employing torture, violating the rules of war, and this is often employed in desperate or asymmetrical conflicts. Asymmetrical warfare describes conflicts between belligerents with vastly different levels of military power and capabilities, with the weaker party often employing conventional tactics to offset disadvantages. This form of warfare presents challenges for conventional militaries and it requires adaptation to unpredictable battlefields and confronting elusive enemies. Asymmetrical warfare blurs the distinction between combatants and civilians, which presents a major ethical dilemma and strategic complexities. So when you think about it, I once had a political science professor who said it's almost impossible to beat um, a, 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 a local force that is on its home turf if they're effectively using guerrilla warfare. So this was exampled, like I said, as I mentioned earlier about the case of Haiti, and there have been numerous other historical examples where it just became impossible to truly beat certain forces on their home turf because again they can keep blending into the mountains, they can keep hiding in the caves, they can move through the tunnels, they can use the cover of night, and so as a whole they make it very difficult to be captured and beaten because they know that in a head-to-head combat they're not going to win. So they're going to keep on using subterfuge. They're going to keep on hiding. They're going to keep on retreating. They're going to keep on evading until they can tire the enemy out to the point where the enemy has to go home. Because if you wage a battle too long and too hard, eventually the attrition will get to you and you will lose your cause. I hope this helped you today, bringing you this short sort of explanation of guerrilla warfare, of dirty tactics, of asymmetrical warfare, which, once again, like I said, if you're going into a battle, you probably need to plan and then plan some more and then plan again. And then when you're done, sleep on it tonight and then come back the next day and plan some more. So that's how you win a war, right? You don't win a war by going head to head and just not having a plan. Not having a plan absolutely sucks, and you don't want to be in that position. You always want to have a plan, and you always want to be ahead of your opponents every every hour, every day, every week, every year. You want to be beating them to the punch. You want to use everything you can against them. I hope this has been a wonderful message for you. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thank you again for listening. Have a wonderful day.